Little girl can't even stand up." The sharp words cut through the air in front of Lincoln High, echoing through the gloomy morning. 16-year-old Maya Williams was motionless in her wheelchair, silently watching her textbooks scattered on the wet ground like fallen leaves. The three most popular students in the school circled her like predators that had smelled blood, their cruel smiles reflected in the cell phone lenses of the crowd filming the scene. The laughter erupted sharp, piercing, and inhuman. Maya's trembling hands reached out to pick up each book, rainwater mixing with her red eyes. But behind the glistening water, there was no room for tears. There was only something burning, fierce and silent, like a fire trapped in a steel cage. It was no longer pain, it was no longer fear, it was anger, tempered to a cold, razor-sharp edge. The anger of someone who was used to being looked down upon, but this time, he would not bow his head. He would not wait for anyone to defend him. He would not beg for mercy, because this moment was not just a touch of humiliation, but the beginning of a counterattack that this entire school would never forget. 3 weeks earlier, Maya had arrived at Lincoln High School for her junior year transfer, her father wheeling her through pristine hallways lined with gleaming trophy cases and college banners that seemed to mock her presence. Colonel David Williams, a decorated military veteran with steel-gray hair and kind eyes, pushed her wheelchair with practiced ease, while Maya's sharp gaze swept the environment with calculated precision. She noted exit routes, crowd patterns, and authority figures with the systematic attention of someone who had learned never to take safety for granted. Students whispered and stared as they passed, their voices carrying fragments of ignorance that Maya had heard 1,000 times before. "Why doesn't she go to the special school down the street?" one girl murmured to her friend, not bothering to lower her voice. "My mom says disabled kids bring down test scores and make everything harder for normal students." Another student chimed in with casual cruelty. "She's probably here for sympathy points or something. You know how these people always want special treatment?" Maya's expression remained neutral, but her father's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as they continued down the hallway toward the main office. Principal Martinez greeted them with the kind of aggressive enthusiasm that immediately set Maya's teeth on edge, his voice booming across the office as if her paralyzed legs had somehow affected her hearing. "Welcome to Lincoln High, Maya. We're so excited to have you join our diverse and inclusive community." He emphasized words like inclusion and diversity with the theatrical flair of someone performing for an invisible audience, clearly more concerned with appearing progressive than actually being helpful. When he introduced Maya to her first Myriad history class, he positioned her front and center like a museum exhibit, ensuring that every student had a perfect view of the school's newest charity case. During lunch, Maya sat alone at a corner table while the popular crowd held court at the center of the cafeteria, like royalty surveying their kingdom. The unofficial queen of this particular castle was Jessica Rodriguez, a stunning brunette whose father owned half the commercial real estate in town, and whose smile could freeze water at 20 paces. Her loyal subjects included Marcus Thompson, the star quarterback whose athletic scholarships were already being discussed by college scouts; Ashley Chen, a social media influencer whose follower count was more important to her than her grade point average; and the Morrison twins, Jake and Luke, whose family had been donating to the school since the 1950s and who treated Lincoln High like their personal playground. Maya observed their dynamics with the clinical detachment of a scientist studying lab rats, noting who led and who followed, who desperately sought approval and who dispensed it like precious currency. When she attempted to join the robotics club after school, she faced the kind of passive exclusion that was almost worse than outright hostility. Club members spoke around her rather than to her, treating her like a fragile decoration that might break if they acknowledged her presence too directly. But Maya's eyes lingered on things the other students missed: the state-of-the-art equipment that seemed far too advanced for a high school program, the security cameras positioned at perfect angles throughout the lab, and the locked supply cabinets that probably contained more than just spare circuit boards. That evening, Maya made a phone call that would change everything at Lincoln High School, though nobody would understand the significance until it was far too late. The confrontation came during lunch on a Tuesday, when Jessica Rodriguez approached Maya's isolated table, with her entourage trailing behind like loyal hunting dogs. The cafeteria buzz died to a whisper as students sensed the approaching drama, everyone understanding that Jessica's reputation for psychological warfare was about to be put on full display. She slid into the seat across from Maya with liquid grace, her perfect smile masking the calculated cruelty that lurked beneath the surface like a shark in clear water. "Maya, right?" Jessica's voice dripped with false concern, as sweet as artificial honey. "We need to talk about your situation here. Some parents have been expressing concerns about safety accommodations, and we're all just looking out for everyone's best interests. Nothing personal, of course." Ashley giggled on cue from her position at Jessica's right hand, while Marcus cracked his knuckles in a display of countless victims before Maya. Maya set down her sandwich with deliberate precision and looked directly into Jessica's cold blue eyes without flinching. "What kind of accommodations are you worried about?" she asked, her voice steady as granite despite the tremor that had been in her hands just moments before. The question caught Jessica slightly off guard. Most of her victims cowered or deflected when confronted, but Maya seemed almost eager to engage in this verbal sparring match. "Well, fire drills, for instance," Jessica continued, her smile growing sharper. "What happens if there's an emergency and you can't keep up with everyone else? We're just thinking about the greater good here." The Morrison twins nodded in synchronized agreement, their vacant expressions suggesting they'd never had an original thought between them. Ashley pulled out her phone to capture what she assumed would be Maya's humiliation for her growing online audience. Maya's response cut through the cafeteria noise like a blade through silk. "I've survived 3 house fires, 2 car accidents, and 1 school shooting. I'm still here, which is more than I can say for some people who had working legs. How's your emergency preparedness training going?" The cafeteria fell silent as students processed this unexpected counterattack, and Jessica's face flushed red with the kind of rage that came from being challenged by someone she considered beneath her notice. Marcus stepped forward, his athletic frame meant to intimidate as he loomed over Maya's wheelchair. "You've got some serious attitude for someone who needs help opening doors," he sneered, expecting her to wilt under his physical presence like every other target before her. Instead, Maya wheeled her chair closer rather than backing down, closing the distance between them until she was looking up at him with eyes that burned like dark coals. "I need help with doors because they're designed poorly by people who never considered accessibility," Maya replied with surgical precision. "What's your excuse for needing help with basic thinking?" Scattered laughter rippled through the watching crowd, and Jessica realized with growing horror that her carefully orchestrated intimidation was backfiring spectacularly. She leaned down to Maya's eye level, her voice dropping to a whisper that only her target could hear. "You have absolutely no idea who you're messing with here," Jessica hissed, her breath hot against Maya's ear. "My father owns half this town, including most of the school board members. I could make your life very, very difficult if I wanted to." Maya's response was a whisper that sent ice water through Jessica's veins. "I'm counting on it." As Jessica pulled back, she saw something in Maya's eyes that made her stomach clench with an unfamiliar emotion. For the first time in her life, Jessica Rodriguez realized she might have picked a fight with someone who wasn't afraid of her. In fact, Maya looked almost eager for war. Jessica's campaign of destruction began with surgical precision, each move calculated to chip away at Maya's dignity while maintaining plausible deniability. It started small. Maya's wheelchair would mysteriously get bumped in crowded hallways, sending her books flying while the perpetrators melted into the crowd with innocent expressions. Her elevator access card stopped working without explanation, forcing her to take longer routes between classes that made her late for everything. Jessica's BMW began appearing in Maya's assigned handicapped parking spot with increasing frequency, always with some excuse about just running in for a second, that stretched into hours. The psychological warfare escalated during Maya's presentation on disability rights activism in advanced placement history class. As Maya discussed the evolution of accessibility laws and their impact on American society, Jessica's crew launched a coordinated attack designed to humiliate her in front of 30 witnesses. Ashley began live streaming to her followers with whispered commentary that carried clearly across the silent classroom. "Watch this poor girl try to act normal and pretend she belongs here with the rest of us." Marcus made exaggerated yawning gestures and checked his phone ostentatiously, while the Morrison twins created a symphony of distracting sounds with their devices that made concentration impossible. Maya powered through her presentation with gritted teeth, but her voice began to waver when she noticed that half the class was watching Ashley's stream instead of listening to her carefully researched arguments. Mrs. Henderson, the history teacher, seemed completely oblivious to the orchestrated disruption, grading papers at her desk while her student was systematically torn apart by digital vultures. The presentation that Maya had spent weeks preparing became a nightmare of public humiliation, broadcast live to an audience that grew larger by the minute. The breaking point came during physical education class, when Maya sat on the sidelines during a volleyball game that she obviously couldn't participate in. Jessica approached with a clipboard and stopwatch, her smile as bright and fake as a game show host announcing a rigged contest. Maya, Coach Williams asked me to time your laps around the gymnasium for your modified physical education credits, she announced, loudly enough for everyone to hear. Maya knew this was a complete fabrication. Coach Williams would never single her out for such obvious humiliation. But 20 students were watching, with phones ready to capture whatever happened next. The gymnasium fell silent except for the squeak of sneakers and the rhythmic bounce of balls from other activities happening around the perimeter. Maya realized she faced an impossible choice: refuse to participate and look like she was making excuses for special treatment, or go along with the charade and become a spectacle for everyone's entertainment. She chose dignity over pride and began wheeling laps around the gym's perimeter, while Jessica followed alongside like a predator stalking wounded prey. "Wow, 47 seconds for one lap," Jessica called out with mock enthusiasm, clicking her stopwatch dramatically. "That's really something special, Maya." Students began to snicker and whisper among themselves while Ashley's live stream gained momentum, her cruel commentary adding another layer to the humiliation. This is what participation trophies and lowered standards create, guys. Everyone gets to pretend they're athletes now. Maya completed 5 agonizing laps before stopping, her arms burning with exhaustion and her spirit crushed under the weight of public mockery. Later, Maya found herself locked in the adapted bathroom, tears flowing freely for the first time since arriving at Lincoln High School. She stared at her reflection in the harsh fluorescent lighting, seeing exactly what everyone else saw: a broken girl in a wheelchair who didn't belong in a world designed for people who could walk. But then her phone buzzed with a text message that made her tears stop as abruptly as if someone had turned off a faucet. Maya read the 3 words twice, wiped her face clean, and straightened her shoulders with newfound resolve. When she exited that bathroom, something fundamental had shifted in her entire demeanor. The text message had contained just 3 words that would change everything. "It's time, Maya." Maya willed herself to an empty classroom after the final bell, ensuring she was completely alone before locking the door and positioning herself in a corner where no security cameras could capture her conversation. Her phone call connected on the first ring, and the voice that answered was crisp, authoritative, and completely at odds with the vulnerable girl everyone thought they knew. "Master Chen, it's Maya. They're ready for phase 2 of the operation." The man on the other end of the line sighed heavily before responding, his tone carrying the weight of years and difficult decisions. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Maya? Once we begin the next phase, there's no going back, and the consequences will be permanent for everyone involved." Maya's transformation was immediate and startling. Gone was the trembling victim from the cafeteria, replaced by someone whose voice carried command authority that would have made her military father proud. "Jessica Rodriguez has crossed every single line we established in the parameters," Maya replied with cold precision. "The systematic harassment, the live-streamed humiliation, the institutional complicity from staff members who should know better. She's exactly the perfect test case we've been waiting for. Her behavior patterns match everything we predicted about entitled students who face no consequences for their actions." Maya wheeled to the classroom's large window, overlooking the student parking lot, where Jessica's crew was probably planning tomorrow's torment session around their expensive cars. Master Chen's voice carried both pride and concern as he continued the conversation. "Maya, I want you to remember that the exhibition tournament is in 6 weeks, and that's your absolute deadline for complete behavioral modification of the target group. Can you accomplish the mission parameters within that time frame?" Maya watched Jessica below, noting how the girl constantly checked her reflection in car windows and sought validation from her followers with the desperate hunger of someone deeply insecure beneath her confident facade. Master, I've been paralyzed from the waist down since I was 8 years old, Maya responded with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from overcoming impossible odds. I've spent 8 years adapting, overcoming, and excelling despite everyone's constantly lowered expectations. Jessica Rodriguez has had 16 years of privilege, advantages, and unlimited resources, and she's still fundamentally weak. This won't even be challenging. Her smile was predatory as she tracked each member of Jessica's crew with the focused attention of a hunter studying prey. Your confidence borders on dangerous arrogance, student, Master Chin warned, though his tone carried a note of approval. Maya's laugh was soft but razor-sharp. You taught me that the difference between confidence and arrogance is measured entirely by results, and I always get results. Jessica Rodriguez is about to learn what happens when entitled bullies target someone who actually knows how to fight back. After ending the call, Maya opened her laptop and began typing with the speed and efficiency of a professional intelligence analyst. She accessed databases, social media profiles, academic records, and financial documents with the casual ease of someone who had done this type of research many times before. Within 30 minutes, she had complete psychological profiles on Jessica's entire crew, including their fears, insecurities, behavioral patterns, and pressure points that could be exploited for maximum impact. Maya pulled up architectural plans for Lincoln High School, security protocols, staff scheduling patterns, and emergency procedures with the thoroughness of someone planning a military operation. She cross-referenced this technical data with social media posts to map out her targets' daily routines, favorite locations, peak vulnerability windows, and the relationships that mattered most to them. Her final preparation involved opening a locked case hidden in her wheelchair storage compartment, revealing specialized devices that looked like ordinary school supplies but served very different and far more sophisticated purposes. Maya's fingers traced over the tools that would soon reveal she was far more dangerous than anyone at Lincoln High School could possibly imagine. Maya began her counterattack with psychological warfare so subtle that her targets didn't even realize they were under siege until it was far too late to mount any effective defense. During Jessica's regular social media live stream in the school courtyard, Maya positioned herself within camera range but slightly out of focus, appearing to study innocently while actually operating a small device that interfered with Ashley's phone signal in precisely timed intervals. The result was a live stream that kept cutting out at crucial moments, making Ashley appear incompetent with technology to her growing online audience. Sorry everyone, we're having some technical difficulties here, Ashley mumbled as her viewer count dropped from 200 to 30 in real time. Maya adjusted her interference device with surgical precision, allowing the signal to return just long enough for viewers to rejoin before cutting it out again. This pattern repeated throughout the session, creating the illusion that Ashley was either lying about the technical problems or genuinely incompetent with the technology that formed the foundation of her social media empire. Jessica grew increasingly frustrated as their carefully curated content became an embarrassing disaster broadcast to hundreds of followers. Ashley, fix your trash phone right now, she snapped, her perfect composure cracking under the pressure of public failure. Ashley's eyes narrowed as she spotted Maya sitting nearby, but the girl was simply reading a textbook with the kind of focused concentration that suggested complete innocence. Maya's next phase involved what she privately called coincidence cascades, a series of perfectly timed mishaps that appeared random but followed the psychological profiles she had compiled on each target. Marcus discovered his car keys missing right when he needed to leave for football practice, searching frantically through his locker, backpack, and car before finally finding them in the men's bathroom, exactly where Maya had predicted he would look last, based on his behavioral patterns and masculine pride that would prevent him from asking for help until he had exhausted every other option. The Morrison twins faced a more sophisticated attack when Jake discovered his advanced placement chemistry homework had vanished from his locker without explanation. Luke simultaneously found that his identical assignment had been mysteriously duplicated, with an extra copy appearing in his backpack that he couldn't remember making. When both boys turned in what appeared to be the same work, they were immediately called to Principal Martinez's office for academic dishonesty, a violation that could destroy their college applications and family legacy at Lincoln High. "This is completely impossible," Jake protested as Principal Martinez examined both papers with growing suspicion. "We always do our homework separately and never share answers on anything." But the evidence was undeniable. Both assignments contained identical answers, down to the same calculation errors and formatting choices. Maya watched from the hallway as the Morrison twins turned on each other with accusations and denials, their perfect unity cracking under pressure as self-preservation instincts overrode family loyalty. Jessica began to suspect that Maya was somehow behind the series of coincidences plaguing her crew, but she couldn't prove anything or understand how a disabled girl could orchestrate such sophisticated sabotage. During lunch, she confronted Maya directly with accusations that sounded paranoid even to her own ears. "These weird problems started happening right after you showed up here," Jessica said, her voice tight with frustration. "My friends are having technical issues, losing things, making stupid mistakes they never make." Maya looked up from her salad with an expression of genuine confusion that could have won an Academy Award. "What coincidences are you talking about? I just try to stay out of everyone's way and focus on my studies," she replied with perfect innocence. "That sounds really stressful for your friends, though. Maybe they need better organizational systems or time management skills." Jessica's paranoia was about to make her sloppy and reckless. Exactly what Maya had been counting on from the very beginning. Jessica's desperation drove her to a catastrophically stupid decision that would expose her true character to school administrators and provide Maya with exactly the evidence she needed for the next phase of her plan. Jessica decided to plant a stolen phone in Maya's locker to get her expelled for theft, not knowing that Maya had been monitoring all of their conversations through strategically placed listening devices that looked like ordinary school supplies. Maya allowed Jessica to plant the evidence, then activated a carefully orchestrated sequence of events that would turn the trap back on its creator. During first period, Maya discreetly triggered the school's fire alarm system using a device hidden in her wheelchair's storage compartment, sending the entire building into evacuation mode. As students filed out in orderly lines, Maya positioned herself near the main exit where she could observe everything, while security cameras captured Jessica's increasingly panicked behavior. The fire alarm wasn't random chaos. Maya had orchestrated it to create the perfect opportunity for evidence collection and witness testimony. Principal Martinez reviewed security footage during the evacuation and discovered something that made his blood run cold. Clear video evidence of Jessica planting a stolen phone in Maya's locker just minutes before the fire alarm sounded. When students returned to the building, Jessica was immediately called to the main office while Maya was asked to open her locker in the presence of a teacher and security officer to investigate reports of missing property. Maya's performance was Oscar-worthy as she opened her locker to reveal the planted phone. But instead of appearing shocked or confused, she calmly explained the situation with devastating precision. "Oh, that's Sarah Martinez's phone. She asked me to return it to her after Jessica borrowed it yesterday for some kind of social media project." Maya pulled out her own device, showing text messages that appeared to document the entire transaction, messages she had fabricated using sophisticated spoofing software that left no digital fingerprints. When confronted with this evidence, Jessica found herself trapped in a web of contradictions that she couldn't explain or escape. If she was supposed to return the phone to Sarah, why was she putting it in Maya's locker? Her story collapsed under the weight of basic logic, and her attempts to backtrack only made things worse. Ashley tried to support her friend but inadvertently made the situation more damaging when she blurted out, "Jessica would never steal anything. She has the newest iPhone and doesn't need anyone else's phone." "Then why did she need to borrow Sarah's phone for her project?" Principal Martinez asked with the patient tone of someone watching a suspect dig their own grave. The question exposed Jessica's entire plan to frame Maya, and Ashley realized too late that she had just implicated her best friend in a scheme that could result in criminal charges. Jessica's face went white as she understood that her attempt at sophisticated manipulation had backfired spectacularly, leaving her exposed and vulnerable while Maya appeared completely innocent. Maya maintained her expression of confused concern throughout the entire ordeal, asking helpful questions and offering to assist with the investigation in any way possible. Her performance was so convincing that even the security officer commented on what a mature and responsible young lady she was, completely unaware that he was praising the architect of Jessica's downfall. Jessica's humiliation was complete, but Maya's real power hadn't even been revealed yet. This was still just the warm-up phase of a much larger operation. The psychological pressure began taking its toll on Jessica's crew as paranoia spread through their ranks like a virus, destroying the unity and loyalty that had once made them untouchable. Marcus started questioning whether their recent string of disasters was actually coordinated sabotage rather than bad luck, while Ashley's social media influence crumbled as technical difficulties continued plaguing her content creation efforts. The Morrison twins were barely speaking to each other after the homework incident had damaged their college prospects and family reputation. Maya observed their disintegration from carefully chosen vantage points around the school, having mapped their behavioral patterns with such precision that she could predict their reactions with scientific accuracy. She had studied each target like a chess master analyzing opponent strategies, understanding exactly which pressure points would cause maximum damage to their psychological stability and social standing. The final devastating blow came during Lincoln High's annual college fair, when Maya's research into her targets' backgrounds revealed information that would destroy their most precious achievements. She had discovered that Jessica's early admission to Stanford University, her most prized accomplishment and source of superiority over other students, had been secured through her father's substantial donation rather than academic merit. Maya had also uncovered evidence that Marcus's football scholarship offers were contingent on grades he had been faking through systematic academic dishonesty. Using carefully crafted anonymous tips sent to college admissions offices, Maya triggered investigations into both students' applications without fabricating any evidence or making false accusations. She simply ensured that existing irregularities received proper scrutiny from people who had the authority to act on what they discovered. The tips were untraceable and appeared to come from concerned citizens rather than fellow students seeking revenge. Jessica received a phone call from Stanford's admissions office during lunch period, and Maya positioned herself where she could observe Jessica's face as her early admission was temporarily suspended pending review of application materials and family financial contributions. The color drained from Jessica's face as she realized that her guaranteed future was suddenly in jeopardy, and her status as Lincoln High's destined success story was crumbling in real time. Marcus received a similar call about his scholarship offers being reviewed for academic integrity violations, and within hours both students were facing the complete collapse of their post-graduation plans. Ashley attempted to rally the group with wild theories about Maya being behind everything, but her credibility had been destroyed by weeks of technical failures that made her appear incompetent and unreliable. Jessica confronted Maya one final time in the school library, her voice cracking with desperation and rage. "I know you're doing this to us somehow. I don't understand how you're managing it, but I know it's you destroying everything we've worked for." Maya looked up from her advanced calculus homework with an expression of genuine sympathy that was more insulting than any direct attack could have been. "Jessica, I understand that you're stressed about Stanford and everything that's happening," Maya replied with the patient tone of someone addressing a confused child. "But blaming me for your problems won't solve anything. Maybe you should focus on your own actions and choices instead of looking for scapegoats to blame for consequences you created yourself." The librarian overheard this exchange and witnessed Maya's calm, reasonable response to Jessica's aggressive accusations, perfectly reinforcing the image of Maya as an innocent victim being harassed by an unstable bully. Jessica was about to discover that Maya's psychological warfare had been just the warm-up act for something far more devastating. The revelation began during what everyone assumed would be Maya's first martial arts class at Dragon's Gate Dojo, located just 15 minutes from Lincoln High School. Jessica's crew had followed her there expecting to film another humiliation for Ashley's revenge content. The disabled girl tries karate seemed like perfect material for their ongoing campaign of public mockery. They hid in the parking lot with phones ready, anticipating footage that would provide weeks of entertainment at Maya's expense. Master David Chen emerged from the dojo to personally greet Maya, and Jessica felt her world tilt sideways as she recognized the distinguished Asian man as her own uncle, her mother's older brother who had always been disappointed in the family's materialism and lack of discipline. Inside the dojo, Maya transferred from her wheelchair to the training mat with fluid precision that suggested years of practice rather than beginner's uncertainty. The hidden observers expected modified exercises or gentle stretches designed for someone with limited mobility. Instead, Maya immediately dropped into a perfect horse stance, using only her arms for support, her core strength and balance rivaling that of students who had been training for years. When Master Chen commanded "begin," Maya exploded into motion that took everyone's breath away. Her upper body flowed through traditional forms with devastating beauty, blocks, strikes, and defensive maneuvers executed with Olympic-level precision that transformed her wheelchair from mobility aid into weapon extension. "Maya Williams has been my student for 8 years," Master Chen announced to the assembled class, his voice carrying clearly through the dojo walls to the parking lot where Jessica's crew listened in growing horror. "She is currently ranked 3rd in the nation for adaptive martial arts, holder of 6 national tournament championships, and a candidate for the Paralympic team representing the United States." The hidden bullies watched in shock as Maya demonstrated board-breaking techniques, her strikes shattering wood with the same hands they had seen trembling while picking up scattered homework. "Maya has also been consulting with our school district on anti-bullying initiatives," Master Chen continued, dropping a bombshell that made Jessica's blood freeze in her veins. Her transfer to Lincoln High School was part of a special program designed to document and address systematic harassment of disabled students throughout our educational system. The revelation hit like a freight train. Maya's vulnerability had been performance art, and her careful documentation of every incident was building a legal case that could destroy careers and close institutions. Master Chen handed Maya a folder, thick with printed materials, as he explained her true mission to the class. "Maya's father isn't just a military veteran. Colonel David Williams is the head of our district's new Student Safety Task Force, created in response to federal pressure regarding civil rights violations in educational settings. Maya's experiences at Lincoln High have been systematically documented as evidence for policy reform and administrative accountability." As the formal class ended, Maya demonstrated her most advanced skills, combat techniques specifically adapted for wheelchair users that turned perceived limitations into tactical advantages. She moved like water around imaginary opponents, flowing and striking with precision that made her wheelchair an extension of her body, rather than a restriction on her movement. Her chair didn't limit her power, it amplified and focused it in ways that standing fighters couldn't match. Ashley whispered frantically into her phone, her voice shaking with fear. "Guys, we have a major problem here. This girl isn't what we thought she was at all." Inside the dojo, Maya addressed her fellow students with the authority of someone who had been in complete control from the very first day. Bullying thrives in environments where victims appear powerless and authority figures fail to intervene. My mission at Lincoln High was to document exactly how students and staff respond when they believe someone cannot fight back. Maya wheeled to the center of the training mat and looked directly at the windows where Jessica's crew was hiding, speaking as if she could see through walls. "The question was never whether I could defend myself physically. The real question is whether Lincoln High School can defend its reputation when this documentation becomes public knowledge and federal investigators start asking difficult questions about civil rights violations and institutional negligence." Master Chen's final words sealed their fate. Maya's report is due next week, and she will be recommending either targeted intervention or complete administrative overhaul based on what she has observed and experienced. The choice belongs to the institution, meaningful change or federal oversight. Jessica's crew finally understood the terrifying truth. They hadn't been hunting prey, they had been studied, documented, and dissected by a predator who had been in control of the situation from the very beginning. The vulnerable girl was gone, replaced by someone who had been gathering evidence for a legal case that could destroy everything they thought they knew about power and consequences. Maya's comprehensive report landed on Superintendent Dr. Sarah Martinez's desk like a legal nuclear bomb. Its 200 pages containing security footage, time-stamped incident reports, staff negligence documentation, and federal ADA violation evidence that could trigger criminal investigations and congressional hearings. More damaging than the individual incidents were the witness statements from 23 other disabled students throughout the district who had experienced similar harassment but never reported it due to fear of retaliation and institutional indifference. Dr. Martinez immediately called an emergency meeting with Lincoln High's principal, the entire school board, the district's legal team, and representatives from the state education department. Maya attended via secure video conference, her demeanor professional and unshakable as she faced the assembled officials who held the power to destroy or reform the entire educational system. The contrast between the vulnerable victim everyone thought they knew and the composed legal expert now addressing them was striking enough to make several board members visibly uncomfortable. Miss Williams, the board chairman began carefully. These are extremely serious allegations that could have far-reaching consequences for our entire district. Maya's response was measured and devastating. With respect, sir, these are not allegations. They are documented violations of federal civil rights law, specifically the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 544 of the Rehabilitation Act. Every incident I experienced was witnessed by staff members who failed to intervene, report, or follow established protocols for protecting vulnerable students. The legal team shifted nervously as Maya's father, Colonel Williams, entered the video frame with the bearing of someone accustomed to congressional testimony. The Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights has reviewed Maya's preliminary documentation and opened a formal investigation into systematic discrimination throughout this district. Maya's case is simply the most thoroughly documented example of a much larger pattern of institutional failure. The implications of federal oversight sent visible shockwaves through the assembled officials. Principal Martinez attempted damage control with the desperation of someone watching their career dissolve in real time. We had no formal reports of systematic harassment involving Miss Williams. If we had been aware of these issues, we would have taken immediate action to address them. Maya's interruption was surgical in its precision. You had 14 written reports from me, 12 from other students, and 6 incident reports from teachers who witnessed harassment. I have email timestamps, certified mail receipts, and video evidence of you personally dismissing these concerns as normal teenage drama that didn't require administrative intervention. The evidence package Maya presented was comprehensive enough to destroy careers and trigger criminal investigations. Security footage showed Maya being physically blocked from elevators while staff members watched without intervening. Recorded conversations revealed teachers discussing lowering academic standards to accommodate disabled students rather than providing proper support. Social media posts by Jessica's crew detailed planned harassment campaigns with timestamps that proved premeditation. Financial records demonstrated how the Morrison family's donations had influenced disciplinary decisions for years. Dr. Martinez began to understand the scope of potential consequences as Maya continued her presentation. The Office for Civil Rights is reviewing similar complaints from 67 disabled students across your district over the past 5 years. My case was simply the most systematically documented and legally actionable example of institutional discrimination that violated federal law. Maya's consulting work with the Pentagon's Accessibility Compliance Division meant she understood exactly how to build cases that could withstand legal challenges and media scrutiny. Jessica's father, wealthy developer Robert Rodriguez, attempted to minimize the situation through political connections and financial pressure. This is clearly entrapment designed to create problems where none existed before. You cannot send undercover investigators into our schools and then claim discrimination when students engage in normal social interactions. Maya's response shattered his argument. I am a disabled student exercising my federally protected right to education. The fact that you consider equal treatment and basic human dignity to be undercover investigation demonstrates exactly why federal intervention is necessary. The legal implications multiplied as Maya presented her evidence. Jessica's harassment campaign had been live-streamed and permanently recorded, creating federal evidence of civil rights violations. Ashley's social media followers had witnessed systematic discrimination, making the case national in scope. The school's failure to respond to documented reports created institutional liability that could result in criminal charges against administrators. Maya's recommendations were swift and non-negotiable. Complete administrative overhaul at Lincoln High. mandatory disability awareness training for all staff, independent oversight of disciplinary procedures, compensation fund for affected students, and implementation of anonymous reporting systems that bypassed local administrators. The alternative, Maya explained with military precision, is federal takeover of your district's special education program and potential criminal prosecution for civil rights violations under federal law. When board members asked what Maya needed to recommend cooperation rather than federal intervention, her answer demonstrated the thoroughness of her planning. Jessica, Rodriguez, Marcus Thompson, Ashley Chen, and the Morrison twins would transfer to alternative education programs with mandatory sensitivity training. Their college applications would include documentation of civil rights violations. Their families would fund scholarship programs for disabled students throughout the district. Colonel Williams added the final pressure. Maya's consulting work has helped 12 school districts avoid federal sanctions and criminal investigations. Her recommendations typically save institutions millions in legal fees, reputation damage, and federal oversight costs. The choice is simple: voluntary compliance or mandatory federal control. The meeting concluded with unanimous acceptance of Maya's terms, but the individual consequences for her tormentors were just beginning. The disciplinary hearings took place in the district's main boardroom, with each of Maya's former tormentors facing individual consequences while Maya provided testimony that would determine their educational and legal futures. Maya attended every session, her presence now commanding respect rather than mockery, as school officials recognized her as the professional investigator who had exposed their institutional failures. The contrast between the vulnerable victim they remembered and the composed expert witness before them was stark enough to make several administrators question everything they thought they understood about power dynamics and assumptions. Jessica Rodriguez entered first, flanked by her parents and accompanied by an expensive lawyer who had clearly explained the severity of federal civil rights charges. Her usual confidence had been replaced by hollow defiance as she faced documentation that could result in criminal prosecution and permanent damage to her future prospects. Robert Rodriguez looked furious at the legal bills and negative publicity, while his wife appeared genuinely broken by her daughter's systematic cruelty toward a disabled student. "Jessica," Dr. Martinez began formally, "you have been charged with systematic harassment, civil rights violations, cyberbullying, and conspiracy to file false reports against another student. How do you respond to these documented charges?" Jessica's answer revealed her complete disconnection from reality and fundamental misunderstanding of the situation's severity. "I was just joking around with her. Everyone knows Maya is tough enough to handle some teasing, and I never meant for things to go this far." Maya's response was devastating in its calm precision. "Jessica, you organized a coordinated campaign to humiliate me, based specifically on my disability. You live-streamed my forced participation in mock physical challenges designed to highlight my limitations. You attempted to frame me for theft when your harassment failed to drive me away. These were not jokes. They were calculated federal crimes designed to deny my right to education." The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Ashley Chen's live streams, archived by followers before she could delete them, showed clear intent to humiliate and degrade a disabled student for entertainment purposes. Jessica's text messages, recovered through the investigation, revealed premeditated harassment strategies and coordination with other students. Her punishment was swift and permanent: transfer to alternative education, community service at disability advocacy centers, formal apology read at school assembly, and permanent revocation of her Stanford admission. Marcus Thompson faced similar consequences as his scholarship offers evaporated when universities learned about his participation in harassing a disabled student. The football player who had once used his physical presence to intimidate Maya now slouched in his chair, his athletic career effectively over before it had truly begun. "I honestly didn't think it was that serious," Marcus mumbled, still failing to grasp the magnitude of his actions. "She seemed like she could take care of herself and handle whatever we did." Maya's response was surgical. "Marcus, you used your physical presence to intimidate me because you believed I couldn't defend myself. You encouraged others to film my humiliation for their entertainment. You participated in systematic harassment based on my disability. The fact that I was professionally documenting your actions for legal purposes does not change the harassment's impact or reduce your criminal liability under federal law." Ashley Chen's hearing revealed the depth of her cruelty as social media analytics demonstrated. She had gained over 500 followers by posting Maya's humiliation content. She had literally profited from discrimination against a disabled student, while encouraging her audience to participate in systematic harassment. "I was just sharing my normal school experience," Ashley protested weakly. "It's not my fault if people found my content entertaining or if Maya got upset about normal social media posts." Maya presented printed screenshots of Ashley's content with devastating effect. "Ashley, you labeled me inspiration porn and used derogatory terms about my disability in your posts. You encourage followers to comment on my physical appearance and mobility limitations. You turn my disability into entertainment content for social media engagement and financial profit through sponsorship deals." Ashley's punishment included social media restrictions, digital literacy training, mandatory volunteering with disability rights organizations, and loss of all sponsorship agreements. The Morrison twins' hearing exposed their family's toxic sense of entitlement as their parents attempted to buy their way out of consequences through substantial donations and political connections. Dr. Martinez's response was firm and final. "Mr. Morrison, your sons participated in systematic harassment of a disabled student, while previous misconduct was covered up through your family's financial influence. That pattern of corruption and privilege ends today, regardless of your donations or political connections." Jake and Luke Morrison received identical punishments: alternative education placement, community service, and college applications permanently flagged with disciplinary records that would follow them to every institution. Maya addressed each perpetrator directly during victim impact statements that demonstrated the professional training behind her mission. "Your punishments are not revenge, they are accountability. You chose to attack someone you perceived as vulnerable, and federal law exists specifically to protect disabled students from exactly this type of systematic harassment." 6 months after Maya's documentation triggered federal intervention, Lincoln High School had been transformed into a national model for inclusive education that attracted visitors from school districts across the country. The changes began with physical improvements, upgraded elevator systems, modified gymnasium equipment, and accessible technology labs, but the deeper cultural shifts were what made the transformation truly revolutionary. Maya's case study had been adopted by the Department of Education as the template for addressing institutional ableism in American schools. Dr. Martinez, who had survived the investigation by fully cooperating with reforms, now presented Maya's methods at national education conferences where her story had become legendary among administrators seeking to avoid federal intervention. The Maya Williams case taught us that accommodation is not charity, it is civil rights law that must be enforced consistently and without exception. Our students with disabilities are not asking for special treatment. They are demanding equal access to education that should have been provided from the beginning. Lincoln High's new accessibility coordinator, Dr. Sarah Kim, implemented programs that revolutionized how disabled and non-disabled students interacted throughout the educational environment. Peer mentorship programs connected students across ability lines, while adaptive sports showcased capabilities rather than limitations. Mandatory disability awareness curriculum changed how all students understood difference, privilege, and inclusion in ways that would affect their entire adult lives. Maya's former teachers underwent extensive retraining that transformed their understanding of inclusive education and legal responsibilities. Mrs. Henderson, who had ignored harassment in her classroom, became a passionate advocate for inclusive teaching practices after understanding how her negligence had enabled federal crimes. "I thought I was being kind by not drawing attention to Maya's needs," she reflected during mandatory training sessions. "I was actually being criminally negligent by failing to protect a student from systematic harassment." The ripple effects extended far beyond Lincoln High as Maya's documentation methods became standard protocol for civil rights investigations in educational institutions nationwide. School districts began proactively hiring Maya's consulting firm to audit their accessibility compliance before problems arose, recognizing that prevention was far less expensive than federal intervention. The Maya method of systematic documentation became required training for civil rights investigators across multiple federal agencies. Jessica's case became a cautionary tale throughout the district as students learned that harassment based on disability carried serious legal consequences that could destroy college prospects and future careers. The financial impact was significant as Lincoln High's insurance rates increased substantially due to documented civil rights violations, creating economic incentives for prevention that resonated with budget-conscious administrators who might otherwise ignore moral arguments. Maya's parents established the Williams Foundation to provide legal support for disabled students facing discrimination throughout the educational system. Colonel Williams became a nationally recognized speaker on civil rights enforcement in education, while Maya's mother developed training programs for parents advocating for their disabled children. Master Chen's dojo partnered with schools throughout the region to provide adaptive martial arts programs that taught strength, discipline, and confidence to students who had been told they were fundamentally limited. The media attention transformed Maya into an unexpected advocate who testified before congressional committees about disability rights in education, her wheelchair positioned confidently at witness tables as she addressed lawmakers about systematic discrimination and federal enforcement mechanisms. Every disabled student deserves what I had to fight for through federal legal action. The right to learn without harassment, participate without mockery, and succeed without having to prove their worth to people who should already understand their fundamental human dignity. Technology companies began recruiting Maya for accessibility consulting, as her unique perspective on adaptation and problem-solving made her invaluable for creating inclusive products that served broader markets. Her approach to turning perceived limitations into competitive advantages influenced product development across multiple industries. The systemic changes extended beyond education as Maya's documentation methods influenced how civil rights violations were investigated in employment, housing, and public accommodation cases throughout the federal system. Have you ever been underestimated because of how you look or what others assumed about your capabilities? Share your experiences in the comments below because your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear it today. 2 years later, Maya Williams sat in her dormitory room at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, her wheelchair positioned beside a desk covered with advanced robotics projects that could revolutionize assistive technology for millions of people worldwide. Her roommate, Sarah Kim, was a brilliant hearing-impaired engineering student who communicated fluently in American Sign Language, and together they were developing innovations that could bridge the gap between human limitation and technological possibility in ways that previous generations never imagined. Maya's phone buzzed with an unexpected text message that made her pause in her calculations. Maya, this is Jessica Rodriguez. I know you probably don't want to hear from me after everything that happened, but I wanted you to know that I'm genuinely different now. The community service at the Disability Advocacy Center opened my eyes to how cruel and ignorant I was. I'm studying social work now, hoping to help kids like I used to be. Kids who hurt others because they're terrified of being different themselves. Maya stared at the message for several long moments before typing her response with careful consideration. Jessica, real growth requires genuine courage, and I'm glad you found yours. Change is possible for anyone willing to do the hard work of examining their own behavior and making different choices moving forward. The response was gracious without being naive, acknowledging growth while maintaining appropriate boundaries with someone who had caused significant harm through systematic harassment and federal crimes. Through her dormitory window, Maya watched MIT students crossing the campus quad with the easy confidence of people who belonged in spaces designed for intellectual excellence. She noticed a freshman in a wheelchair struggling with a heavy door, and immediately 3 upperclassmen rushed to help, not with pity or condescension, but with the casual solidarity that should be normal in every educational environment across the country. Maya's research focused on adaptive advantage, the revolutionary concept that overcoming obstacles creates problem-solving skills and innovative thinking that benefits everyone in society. Her work bridged martial arts principles with engineering design, creating technology that enhanced human capability rather than simply compensating for perceived limitations. Major corporations and government agencies were already expressing interest in her prototypes. Her phone rang with a call from Dr. Martinez at Lincoln High School. Maya, our graduating class has voted unanimously to have you speak at their commencement ceremony. They want to hear from someone who transformed their worst experience into positive change that protected future students. Maya smiled as she remembered her first day at Lincoln High, when she had carefully observed the trophy cases and college banners while planning an investigation that would change everything. I would be honored to speak at graduation, Dr. Martinez. It will be interesting to return to Lincoln High under such different circumstances. That evening, Maya video called her parents to share the news, and Colonel Williams beamed with the pride of someone who had watched his daughter turn systematic oppression into a force for institutional reform that protected countless other students. "Your mother and I always knew you were destined for remarkable things," her father said with visible emotion. "But watching you transform your worst experience into legal precedent that protects other disabled students that surpassed even our highest expectations for your impact on the world," Maya's mother added her own perspective. "You didn't just survive what they did to you, sweetheart. You documented it so thoroughly that no other student will have to endure the same institutional negligence and systematic harassment." Maya's evening reflection was interrupted by Sarah, who signed excitedly about their latest breakthrough in adaptive mobility technology. Their collaborative project had attracted attention from Paralympic athletes, NASA engineers, and medical researchers who recognized its potential applications for space, exploration, and rehabilitation medicine. What had started as Maya's response to bullying had evolved into technology that could enhance human performance in the most challenging environments imaginable. Master Chen called during Maya's meditation practice with wisdom that connected her current success to her earlier struggles. "Student, you have mastered the most difficult lesson in martial arts, transforming opposition into opportunity. Your greatest enemies became your greatest teachers by forcing you to develop skills and strength you might never have discovered otherwise." Maya's response reflected years of growth and perspective. "Master, I'm not sure Jessica and her friends were teachers as much as they were catalysts. The real teaching came from everyone who chose to support positive change after the truth was revealed." Leading insight demonstrates true wisdom, Maya. Authentic martial arts is never about defeating opponents. It is about transforming conflict into personal growth and societal improvement. Maya wheeled onto MIT's campus for her evening workout at the Adaptive Athletics Center, where students nodded respectfully as she passed. They knew her as someone who achieved exceptional results in research, advocacy, and competition, rather than someone who needed sympathy or special consideration. In the Athletics Center, Maya worked through advanced forms with fluid precision, her movements demonstrating how perceived limitations could become actual advantages through proper training and mindset. New students watched in awe as she performed techniques that turned her wheelchair into an extension of her martial arts mastery, rather than a restriction on her capability. As she finished her practice, Maya reflected on the journey from Lincoln High's hostile hallways to MIT's collaborative laboratories, understanding that the girl who once picked up scattered homework from rain puddles now designed technology that could revolutionize human mobility throughout the world. CTA and T's. Maya's commencement speech at Lincoln High School drew a sustained standing ovation from the same students who had once watched her humiliation in uncomfortable silence. She stood behind the podium, having transferred from her wheelchair to demonstrate that adaptation takes many forms and serves different purposes. Addressing a graduating class that included former tormentors who had learned difficult lessons about consequences, accountability, and personal growth through federal legal intervention, "2 years ago, some of you watched me get systematically bullied in these hallways," Maya began, her voice carrying clearly across the packed auditorium. "Some of you participated in that harassment. Some of you filmed it for social media entertainment. Some of you stayed silent when you could have intervened. Today, I'm not here to shame anyone for past choices that cannot be changed. I'm here to talk about the choices we all make moving forward and how those decisions shape the world we create together." She paused deliberately, making direct eye contact with Jessica Rodriguez, who sat in the audience with her family after completing her alternative education program and gaining acceptance to community college for social work studies. Jessica had transformed her community service requirement into genuine advocacy work that would define her future career helping vulnerable populations. "The students who harassed me taught me something valuable through their eventual transformation, not through their initial cruelty, but through their willingness to change when held accountable with both consequences and compassion rather than just punishment or revenge, Maya continued, her message balancing justice with hope for redemption and growth. Maya's voice strengthened as she delivered her central message. Real change only happens when we stop accepting that's just how things are as an excuse for inequality, discrimination, and systematic oppression. Every time you see someone being treated unfairly and you choose to speak up, you're changing the world for everyone. Every time you choose inclusion over exclusion, courage over comfort, you're changing the world in ways that protect people who cannot protect themselves. Should there be stricter consequences for bullying behavior that targets people's disabilities or other characteristics they cannot change? Let us know what you think in the comments below, because your voice matters in creating educational environments where everyone can succeed. The speech concluded with Maya's signature message that had become her personal motto and professional mission statement. Your limitations are often other people's assumptions about your capabilities. Your assumptions about others are often their greatest limitations in achieving their potential. The moment you understand that crucial difference, you gain the power to change everything for yourself and everyone around you. As the ceremony ended, Maya found herself surrounded by current students asking questions about MIT admissions, civil rights law, adaptive athletics, and career opportunities in accessibility consulting. She noticed a shy freshman in the crowd, a boy with autism who had been watching the proceedings quietly from the back row, clearly working up courage to approach her with questions about surviving high school as someone who was different. "You have something you want to ask me?" Maya observed gently, recognizing the signs of someone who felt isolated and vulnerable in ways she understood completely. The boy nodded nervously before finding his voice. "I start high school here next year, and I'm scared they won't understand me or accept me for who I am. What happens if they treat me like they treated you?" Maya's response carried the weight of hard-won experience and genuine hope for the future. "Then you document everything that happens. You teach them about who you really are, and if they refuse to learn or treat you with basic respect, you call me immediately. I'll make sure they learn about federal law and consequences for discrimination. But I have a feeling Lincoln High has learned its lessons about treating students with disabilities, and you're going to do amazing things here." 6 months later, Maya received a package at MIT containing a video message from Lincoln High's current robotics team. Disabled and non-disabled students working together on adaptive technology projects that had won the state championship. Their innovative designs incorporated accessibility principles inspired by Maya's consulting work, proving that inclusion made everyone more creative and successful. The final frame displayed a message spelled out in robotics components. "Thank you for showing us that different isn't less capable, it's just different approaches that change everything for the better." Maya smiled as she returned to her latest research project developing adaptive mobility technology for Mars exploration missions, understanding that the girl who once couldn't access a simple school elevator now designed movement solutions for other planets and impossible environments. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number that immediately captured her attention. "Maya, I'm a disabled student in Texas facing the same kind of systematic harassment you experienced at Lincoln High. Can you help me document what's happening and fight back legally?" Maya's response was immediate and uncompromising. "Send me your address and detailed information about the situation. I'll be there next week with legal support and documentation equipment. And make sure you're recording everything that happens until I arrive."